Go.
Welcome, good morning to the UNC press conference. My name is Dr. Kirk Megu. I am the Public Relations Officer of the UNC. And today, as we continue to tell the public and inform our citizens how the UNC government is making everybody win, we have today the Attorney General, the Honorable John Jeremie, and also the Honorable Saddam Hosein, MP for Barataria, Samoa, Minister of Land and Legal Affairs, and also Minister in the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. So today we begin our press conference as this Friday Parliament will reopen and we have some very important pieces of legislation. So with that, I'd like to invite to the podium the Honorable John Jeremie, Senior Counsel.
Thank you, and good morning, Kirk and Minister Hosein. This morning, I speak briefly to the parliamentary agenda in the coming week or so. In the first week, we shall be treating hopefully with three matters. The Tobago House of Assembly Amendment Bill, which I'll speak to very briefly, shortly. The Motor Vehicles Road Traffic Amendment Bill, which I too will speak to very, very briefly in a minute. And the special zones, the Zones of Special Operations Act, which we propose to see enacted. Now, if I could begin with the matter that has thrust itself before us with the success of the TPP in the Tobago House of Assembly election a day or two ago. The Tobago House of Assembly amendment is designed to create an increase in the number of secretaries and to increase the quorum for the conduct of business in the Assembly. It is a short piece of legislation. It will not take too much parliamentary time, and we trust that it will not prove to be controversial. We look forward to the support of all parties in the lower house on that measure. With respect to the second item, the Motor Vehicles Road Traffic Amendment, what I have to say on that is that the government has listened to the voices which have been raised in the national community over the past week and a half with respect to the increase in fines and penalties. Now, our first priority as a government is to return discipline and order to a state of collapse. And that includes doing something about the lawlessness that has taken place on our streets. We have listened to voices, and what we propose to do in the amendment bill is to impose a system which requires constables to give a mandatory warning with respect to certain offenses. Now, that is not to say that we are abandoning in any way, in any shape or form, our resolve, but we will implement our resolve with the level of humane activity that this government is known for. In so far as the zones are concerned, what we discovered after we had gone the way of the state of emergency for the express purpose of disrupting a threat to national security, an existential threat to the state, what we discovered was that there were tangential benefits to disrupting the lines of communication that existed between gang leaders who were incarcerated and their soldiers who were outside of the prison system. We intend to lock in those advantages which have yielded tremendous results in terms of the drop in homicides, the drop in woundings, and the drop in violent crime generally. And our first attempt to do that would be with respect to the zones legislation. Now, the legislation which is before the House, of course I cannot speak to the specific provisions of any of these bills, but the legislation which is before the House is intended to ensure that there is a measure of proportionality between our responses and the threats which we now face. So that instead of a national state of emergency, we propose to concentrate on hotspots. There is legislative precedent. I think I can say that without going into the bill. There is legislative precedent for what we propose to do. There are checks and controls. There will be judicial oversight. There will be some time constraint in respect of how long a designation of a particular zone of operation, how long that designation can last, and there will be procedures set in the bill to govern who exactly can declare somewhere a zone of operation. Now, with those few words, I will hand you over to my colleague. I just ask you to remember that these are matters which are before the Parliament, and that we this morning cannot, in good conscience, speak in detail to those matters. We can speak to the parliamentary agenda in broad strokes, but the details will have to await the parliamentary discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Attorney General. Those are very important pieces of legislation that when the Parliament opens this Friday, your government will be listening to your concerns about the traffic fines, responding to the incredible victory with no opposition in the THA yesterday, the blue wash, and also the zones of peace as the state of emergency comes to an end. These are extremely important. And to further the information to you, I will introduce Minister Saddam Hosein, Minister of Land and Legal Affairs, and also in the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. MP.
Thank you very much, Dr. Megu. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Firstly, let me thank the Attorney General for a very precise, surgical presentation. A man of few words, but a man of action. On behalf of the United National Congress, I would like to wish all of Trinidad and Tobago a happy and prosperous New Year. This is the first time I'm appearing on the press conference since the New Year has dawned upon us. And since then, the government, after assuming office on the 20th of April 2025, we have set out with our national agenda. We have set out to ensure that the promises that we made on the campaign trail would have evolved itself clearly into government policy. We have articulated our plans to Trinidad and Tobago, and we did in fact place all of those plans in what we have here as our document called the Manifesto 2025, which the Cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago had adopted as official government policy. So when persons may question us why we are doing press conferences on these platforms, our plans, our vision were clearly articulated on a UNC platform, reduced into this document called our manifesto, and then subsequently was agreed upon by the Cabinet as official government policy. And within this particular document, each ministry that was appointed by the Honorable Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar Senior Council would have indicated that we are going to take a multifaceted approach to Trinidad and Tobago in reviving itself from the years and the decade of corruption, inept, and incompetence by the former PNM regime. They have left Trinidad and Tobago in a complete mess. In the last 8 or 9 months or so, we have been tasked with the job, which we're not complaining of, but we are fixing Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that we have a place where it is safe for each and every citizen to reside and live in. And this morning, the Attorney General would have outlined what our legislative agenda will be for Friday's sitting of the Parliament. The House is expected to convene at 1:30 p.m. Yesterday, the order paper was issued to all members of Parliament. And on the order paper, the Attorney General would have indicated that 3 bills were laid on the order paper, and one being that of the Special Zones Bill, or Special Areas of Operation. And this morning, I'm here to inform Trinidad and Tobago of some of the successes that we have seen so far in the areas of national security. Firstly, I want to begin by saying that neither the law nor the Constitution requires myself or the Attorney General to be here. But as part of a government that is transparent and responsible, we are here to report to the people of Trinidad and Tobago thus far of the successes of the state of emergency that was in fact declared on the 18th of July 2025. And that state of emergency, as the Attorney General indicated, was prompted due to exceptional circumstances. But we as a government would have reaped, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, tangential benefits in that SOE that was declared. And this morning, I am happy to report that when we closed the year 2025, we were able to announce to the public that there was a 42% reduction in the murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago. And that didn't happen by chance. It happened because we now had a Prime Minister as the head of the National Security Council taking very important, decisive, and proportional decisions in order to stifle criminal activities in Trinidad and Tobago, but at the same time resourcing the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and other arms of the protective services with what is necessary in order to arrest the crime situation. And I want to go into the facts and the figures because the population deserves to know what the numbers were when we met office. The former PNM administration in 2024, being their last full year of governance, I believe former Minister Hines was the Minister of National Security then. And then, well, of course, they had to draw straws in cabinet and select a new Prime Minister and so on. And all that is history. But they left Trinidad and Tobago, and I want to remind the population, in 2024, we reported 626 murders in 2024. Never forget that. That was the bloodiest year in our nation's history. And just us taking office 1 year later, on the 28th of April, not even a full year, we were able to report successfully that the murder rate was 369 instead of crossing 600, representing a remarkable decrease in the number of homicides in Trinidad and Tobago. And what is important is that the data shows us this. It shows us that the major contributing factor towards homicides in Trinidad and Tobago was in relation to gang-related activities or gang-related murders. In the year 2020, there were 130 gang-related murders. In the year 2021, there were 189 gang-related murders. Keep going up. In the year 2022, 244 gang-related murders. 2023, 261 gang-related murders. 2024, 273 gang-related murders. 2025, with a new UNC government, it went down to 108 gang-related murders. So, the steps, the policies, the laws that we have implemented so far are taking shape. We are seeing the benefits from the policy decisions that we have taken as a government. Gang-related murders are significantly on the decrease, and the Attorney General indicated very early on that we must continue in this trend towards a reduction in crime. And that is one of the measures that we are taking on Friday, which we cannot go into the merits or demerits of the bill, that we are implementing or we are introducing to the Parliament a very important piece of legislation, and it's public knowledge, so I can just hold the front page because everyone has a copy. It's the Law Reform, Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Bill 2026. So this is a copy of the bill in hand, and this bill is a very progressive piece of legislation. It is a piece of legislation that will assist us in fighting the criminals. And I dare say that those who may be against us, they may have questions to answer. And they may have to answer to the population if they choose to do so, if they decide to not support the legislation, because we have seen a trend with this PNM opposition. That in government, they have one narrative, but when they get into opposition, there's another narrative. The history will show us. When we went to Parliament to pass the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act 2025, they voted against it. Voted against it. When we went to the Parliament to pass the Home Invasion Self-Defense Bill, they voted against it. When we went to the Parliament in November 2025 for an extension of the SOE, which we were seeing benefits from, arresting the criminals, you know what they did? They voted against it. So one has to understand or analyze what is the relevance of the PNM, or the opposition, in not supporting these measures that are showing real, tangible benefits to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I think they got a dose of that on Monday, where they were blue-washed out of Tobago. But, ladies and gentlemen, the issue before us today is that we are taking the decisive measures to stop the lawlessness, to put the criminals behind bars, to pass laws that are proportional, to pass laws that will help the people of Trinidad and Tobago in ensuring that we keep our republic safe from the criminals. And I just want to give you all some more statistics before I close in terms of some more progress that we have seen in terms of crime fighting. From the 18th of July 2025 to present, the figures that I have before me that were provided by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, that when you look at the number of firearms and ammunition, which is the weapon of choice of criminals in the SOE that was discovered so far, from July to present, July 2025 to present, we have discovered 292 firearms of various assortment, 71 revolvers, 144 pistols, 45 shotguns, 29 rifles and 3 air rifles. And the number of ammunition that was found and seized would have been 4,341 rounds of ammunition. So we are seeing that we are taking the guns and the ammunition off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago, we are here to ensure as a that we keep you up to date on the affairs of the Parliament and of the affairs of government. So I thank you very much, and I know you may have some questions for myself or the Attorney General. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Hosein, for that very important update on the incredible progress that the government has made in, and how we intend to keep that up in 2026 after the SOE comes to an end. So I will invite both the Attorney General and Minister Hosein to the podium to take questions from the media as we open up the floor. So if you could please state your name and the media house as well. Sure. Yeah, if you would just come to the podium, please.
Guardian Media Limited. Now, the last time you were in government, there was the issue of this zonal SOE, right? At the time, the argument was whether or not this was legal or possible because there was no such thing as a limited SOE. And at the time, the PNM was saying that it was targeting PNM areas where they were PNM support at the time. So this time around, how is it that things might be different? And how do you plan to address this with a zonal SOE?
So, since then, there have been legislative precedents for us to draw on. There is a precedent in a regional legislative precedent. We've looked at it, we've tightened it up, we've looked at those outside of region as well, and we are comfortable now, even if before we had some doubts, we are comfortable now in the lawfulness of that which we are about to embark upon.
I would just like to add historic SOE. There's a long precedent, 1960. A state of emergency just around her house. So there is a long history that PNM were totally erroneous in that criticism in the past. Any other question?
Yeah,
sure.
In terms of ammunition and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you can continue.
Right. Minister, you would have mentioned things like 45 shotguns retrieved, 29 rifles, over 4,000 rounds of ammunition. I'm not too sure if there was a particular target when the SOE was now put in place, and are you pleased with the amount that would have been collected? Because, I mean, when we look at the crime rates over the years and we are seeing this, some persons may argue that this is not a significant amount. So,
okay, the target at the time the SOE was declared was the disruption of an existential threat to the security of the state. I made a statement on that day. The arms of the state had told us that a state of emergency needed to be declared because the gangs had coalesced to plan various things, and we did that. These are tangential benefits. So we seized a number of all types. Those are tangential benefits. The SOE was not declared, as it has been in the past by other governments, to treat with crime or expected reprisals from gang-related crime. This was, in the truest sense of the word, an emergency. And it was, in the true sense of the word, a commitment to disrupt a plan to destabilize the state.
and at present, can you say that you're comfortable or confident that there's no longer that threat?
That threat no longer exists.
Right. In terms of the persons that would have wanted to, persons that were detained during the SAE, there were persons that would have had to go to a tribunal, etc. Could you give us the amount of, in terms of numbers, how much persons would have wanted to appeal that, and what's the latest with that?
It is well over 100, perhaps closer to 200, but I do not have those figures with me. I believe the Minister of Homeland Security will be the proper person to give those figures, and the figures will be.
Just switching topic here, because I know you have mentioned quickly Tobago.
Yes.
right? So now we see that the TPP would have won the election and there was a blue wash. Now the first thing on the list for Tobago, TPP's manifesto is autonomy for Tobago. Can you share where the government stands in terms of autonomy for Tobago?
I think if you refer to the Prime Minister's statement when she had a historic address to the Tobago House of Assembly recently, the Prime Minister was very clear on the government's policy with respect to those particular matters. So I would adopt the statements of the Prime Minister from that particular address.
Of course, we have one team. You don't expect me to contradict myself. This is not the...
Media? Yes, I have. Oh, we have a microphone for you. And if you could just please announce name and media house.
Right. Oren Gordon, freelance reporter and analyst. This has been overtaken by events, Mr. Attorney General, but I wanted to circle back to the boat strikes by the United States Navy on suspected drug smugglers, drug traffickers out of Venezuela. What determination did you make, have you made, as Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, especially since 2 Trinidad and Tobago citizens were killed in those strikes? What determination have you made as Attorney General about whether those strikes were consistent with international law?
Okay, my first look at it, and I took is that the strikes were consistent with international law. I took external advice outside of the Office of the Attorney General, and that was the advice which was given to me by an international expert. Apart from that, I have no comment, save and except to say that even now, I do not know that any Trinidad and Tobago citizen was killed in any strike.
I think that's been documented, but I wouldn't get into that. I'm wondering, I'm not a lawyer, but you're a distinguished one. How does the absence of... You're welcome, sir. How does the absence of due process, how is the absence of due process consistent with this falling within the framework?
So I would not be able to answer that question without going into the meat and bones of the advice that I have received, and I am not able to give that.
From
advice.
whom, if I may ask?
No, you may ask, but I will elect not to say who. What I would say is that it is an international expert, someone who is outside of Trinidad and Tobago.
And you've relayed such advice to the Prime Minister, we should presume.
No comment. I've done my job, which is to ensure that the Republic acts in accordance with law.
One more question from me, if I may.
Sure.
I beg your indulgence. Between the first of the strikes on the boats on September the capture of the, I think we can call him now the former president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, were any United States military assets?
Were any assets deployed?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Were any United States military assets, soldiers, aircraft, missiles deployed from the territory of Trinidad and Tobago?
To do what exactly?
To take part in the boat strikes or the capture of the Venezuelan president?
I have no comment on any of those matters at this time. Any other questions?
Well, just to answer that, because just to tally back on that, you asked to do what, right? But whether, despite whatever it is to do, they were deployed. So you asked to do what, as though the answer could have been yes or no if it was something specific.
No, I wanted to clarify the question. I mean, I need to know what question is being asked of me.
So if we're asking pointedly whether they were deployed, yes or no, was the answer to that?
Are you asking me whether we had in Trinidad and Tobago U.S. military? I think it's common knowledge that we did. No one made a secret of that. What I wanted to know was deployment for what purpose? We had Marines visiting schools, I think, doing training exercises, intense training exercises in Trinidad on their own and with our defense forces.
Sorry, and a clear statement on the day itself that Trinidad and Tobago had no involvement, as did the Ministry of Homeland Security and Defense. So there was no involvement of Trinidad and Tobago in those activities.
Just for clarity, back to the zonal SOE, right? The persons that are detained at present, you say well over 100 SOE, is it that they would remain detained, and if so, until when?
There are logistics which are being worked out by the Minister of Homeland Security and the police as we speak. And I would not like to speak to that today.
Any other questions from
Okay.
I'd like to thank our viewers from around the world. I know all over Trinidad and Tobago, the region, Canada, America, Ghana, Nigeria, India, all over the world. We know people are locked on, and we thank you. We thank Minister Saddam Hosein and the Attorney General, John Jeremie. We thank the media, and we thank everybody present. We hope you have a great day, and we look forward to Friday, the opening of Parliament, and a very, very productive session where we continue to work to ensure that everybody wins. Thanks.